This PowerPoint will cover credentialing, regulations, and ethics in occupational therapy. Credentialing is the process of qualifying an individual or organization based on a predetermined set of standards set as licensure or certification, establishing that a person or institution has achieved professional recognition in the specific field of healthcare. The OTA program in all of Sac City College has to go through some form of credentialing to make sure we are following all the standards that are put forth by the credentialing body. For our program, that would be ACOTE. Accreditation is a mechanism that may be granted to an educational program, healthcare organization, schools, and other organizations. OT educational programs are, as I said before, are accredited by ACOTE, which, as you know, is the Accreditation Council for Occupational Therapy Education. Your healthcare organizations such as hospital, rehabs, skilled nursing facilities, outpatient facilities may be credentialed or accredited by JACO. JACO stands for Joint Commission on Accreditation of Healthcare Organization, or CARF, Commission on Accreditation of Rehab Facilities. Credentialing for a practitioner, there's two parts, certification and then state practice regulatory acts. Practitioners have various certifications that they have to get. For OTAs, we are certified by NBCOT. For each state, have a practice also known as regulatory acts that we have to follow. If the practitioner does not follow the regulations, they can lose their licensure. For us, it's CBOT, and that's how you get your L. Individual certifications are awarded to an individual who has successfully met predetermined qualifications. Process by which an agency grants a person permission to use a certain title if that person has attained entry-level competency. May be voluntary or mandatory as determined by state law. Agencies that certifies OT practitioners is NBCOT. State laws and regulations. OT is regulated in all 50 states and 3 U.S. territories. Major purpose of regulation is to protect consumers from unqualified or unscrupulous practitioners. It significantly affects the practice of occupational therapy. Laws are enacted by legislators. Regulations are developed by regulators who are appointed by the public officials in state departments. They are responsible to describe how the intent of the law will be carried out. So the people on the CBOT board are appointed by the governor, and there's a whole application process and interview process they have to go through before they're actually appointed. The forms of a regulation include licensure, certification, registration, and trademark or title control. Licensure is the most prevalent form of regulation. Currently, 49 states and 3 territories are licensed for OTRs, and the same for OTAs. This provides the highest level of public protection. Prohibits unlicensed persons from practicing OT or referring to themselves as an occupational therapist. Legally defines a certain scope of practice for the profession, mandates entry-level practice, overseen by designated state agency and the Occupational Therapy Board. Certification protects public by prohibiting non-certified persons from referring to themselves as OTRs or OTAs. One state has certification for OTRs and one state has certification for COTAs. Unlike licensure, individuals who do not have certification can practice if they do not refer to services as do not refer themselves their services as occupational therapy. This may provide a definition for OT, but not a scope of practice. And the government agency maintains registry of the individuals who complete eligibility requirements. Registration. This protects the public by prohibiting non-registered persons from referring to themselves as OTRs or OTAs. 2 states have registration laws for OTRs, and 1 state has registration for OTAs. Unlike licensure, individuals who do not have registration can practice if they do not refer to services as occupational therapy. May provide the definition of occupational therapy, but again, not scope of practice. Government agency maintains registry of individuals who complete eligibility requirements. Title control or trademark. Only 1 state does not regulate OTAs at all, and this is Colorado. This provides the least amount of consumer protection. 1 state has trademark laws for OTRs and 1 for OTAs. This protects the title occupational therapist or assistant, but not specific occupational therapy interventions. Government agency maintains registries of individuals who complete eligibility requirements. Prior to California getting their licensure law, we had a trademark law. And what was happening is some people, worked in 1 state and they may have lost their license and came over to California and worked as an OT or an OT assistant. And we had no way of tracking if what they did in another state was unscrupulous, because there was no talking between the different states and because we did not have a licensure board. This is much better now to protect the public with our licensure board. Breaches of confidentialing by an individual. There are different ways individuals can breach confidentiality. 1, negligence. Negligence is something is not done or neglected and results in accident or mishap. For an example, the OTA did not lock the brakes or the patient's wheelchair and the patient fell. You would be considered negligent. The second is malpractice. Therapists must first be found negligent in acts of due care. If a practitioner engages in practice that they know they are not trained in, or they engage in faulty or judgment or decision making and harm results, malpractice may occur. For an example, doing hand therapy without proper training. The third is fraud, falsifying client records, incorrect documentation, and payment fee alteration. Fraud is a direct breach of code of conduct, code of ethics. An occupational therapy practitioner is at risk for suspension or revocation of his or her license to practice. The enforcement of credentials. So who enforces credentials? 1, AOTA does. They have a Standards and Ethics Commission, disciplinary actions for breaches of code of ethics, and routinely notifies NBCOT of issues that arise. Second, NBCOT may discipline the individuals resulting in ineligibility for certification, reprimand, censure, probation, suspension, or revocation of certification. The state board, whose actually their actions are over the other 2, may invoke similar sanctions on individuals for violating the State Practice Act. I was an expert witness on a case where a COTA was doing home health. They actually were inappropriate with a patient. There was fraud with documentation, and the COTA did lose their license through the state of California. They don't take things lightly. Other ways of losing your credentials could be as simple as not informing the state board that you've moved with your new address or you've changed your name. You can be fined for this. You could be reprimanded. You could be put on probation until this is taken care of. If you don't have your license, you are not, I repeat, not able to treat patients. Your employer should pull you off the job and not treat patients at all. And I believe CBOT is also looking at fining facilities who are not keeping up on making sure that their employee's license is in place. So you don't want to be that employee who um, caused a fine to their employer. Ethics. Ethics is a careful and systematic study of morality, ethical code of standards based on moral principles and standards, and the Code of Ethics, which is set forth by AOTA SEC. I've given this link that I have here, gives you a direct link to the Code of Ethics. CBOT has also set up these Code of Ethics based on AOTA's code. I believe CBOT is also looking over the Code of Ethics, making sure it's appropriate for our state. You may need to copy and paste the link to access it if it doesn't work when you click on it. Please go and look at the Code of Ethics, print them out, and get to know them. There are different principles in the Code of Ethics. Actions that benefit others, including but not limited to acts of mercy, kindness, and charity. That's what beneficence is. I do have difficulty pronouncing these. Beneficence requires taking action by helping others. In other words, by promoting good, by preventing harm, and removing harm. Examples of beneficence include protecting and defending the rights of others, preventing harm from occurring to others, removing conditions that will cause harm to others, helping persons with disabilities, and rescuing persons in danger. Non-maleficence, like I said, I have difficulty saying this, is Principle 2. Occupational therapy personnel shall intentionally refrain from actions that cause harm. Basically, this is our Hippocratic oath. Non-maleficence imparts an obligation to refrain from harming others. The principles of non-maleficence is grounded in the practitioner's responsibility to refrain from causing harm, inflicting injury, or wronging others. While beneficence requires actions to incur benefit, non-maleficence requires non-action to avoid harm. Non-maleficence also includes an obligation to not impose risk of harm, even if the potential risk is without malicious or harmful intent. Principle 3 is autonomy and confidentiality. Occupational therapy personnel shall respect the right of the individual to self-determination. The principle of autonomy and confidentiality expresses the concept that practitioners have a duty to treat the client according to the client's desires within the bounds of accepted standards of care, and to protect the client's confidential information, basically HIPAA. Often autonomy is referred to self-determination principle. However, respect for autonomy goes beyond acknowledging an individual as a mere agent and also acknowledges a person's right to hold views, to make choices, and to take actions based on a personal values and beliefs. Autonomy has become a prominent principle of healthcare ethics. The right to make a determination regarding care decisions that directly impact the life of the service recipient should reside with an individual. The principle of autonomy and confidentiality also applies to students in an educational program, to participants to research studies, and to the public who seek information about occupational therapy services. Social justice is principle number 4. Occupational therapy personnel shall provide services in a fair and equitable manner. Social justice, also called as distributive justice, refers to the fair, equitable, and appropriate distribution of resources. The principle of social justice refers broadly to the distribution of all rights and responsibilities in society. In general, the principle of social justice supports the concepts of achieving justice in every aspect of society rather than merely the administration of law. The general idea is that individuals and groups should receive fair treatment and impartial share of the benefits of society. occupational therapy personnel have a vested interest in addressing unjust inequalities that limit opportunities for participation in society. While opinions differ regarding the most ethical approach to addressing distribution of health care resources and reduction of health disparities, the issue of social justice continues to focus on limiting the impact of social inequalities on health outcomes. Principle 5, Procedural Justice. Occupational therapy personnel shall comply with institutional rules, local, state, federal, and international laws, and AOTA documents applicable to the profession of occupational therapy. Procedural justice is concerned with making and implementing decisions according to the fair processes and that ensure fair treatment. Rules must be impartially followed by consistently applied to generate an unbiased decision. The principle of procedural justice is based on the concept that procedures and processes are organized in a fair manner and that policies, regulations, and laws are followed. While the law and ethics are not synonymous terms, occupational therapy personnel have an ethical responsibility to uphold current reimbursement regulations and state territorial laws governing the profession. In addition, occupational therapy personnel are ethically bound to be aware of organizational policies and practice guidelines to set forth regulatory agencies established to protect recipients of the service, research participants, and the public. Veracity is Principle 6. Occupational therapy personnel shall provide comprehensive, accurate, and objective information representing the profession. Veracity is based on the virtues of truthfulness, candor, and honesty. The principle of veracity is the healthcare refers to comprehensive, accurate, and objective transmission of information and includes fostering the client's understanding of such information. Veracity is based on the respect owed to others. In communicating with others, occupational therapy personnel implicitly promise to speak truthfully and not deceive the listener. By entering into a relationship in care of research and recipient of service or research participant enters in a contract that includes a right to truthful information. In addition, transmission of information is incomplete without also ensuring that the recipient or participant understands the information provided. Concepts of veracity must be carefully balanced with other potentially competing ethical principles, cultural beliefs, and organizational policies. Veracity ultimately is a value as means to establish trust and strengthen professional relationships. Therefore, adherence to the principle also requires thoughtful analysis of how full disclosure of the information may impact outcomes. Fidelity, principle number 7. Occupational therapy personnel shall treat colleagues and others professionals with respect, fairness, discretion, and integrity. The principle of fidelity comes from the Latin root fidelis, meaning loyal. Fidelity refers to being faithful, which includes obligations of loyalty and keeping the promises of commitments. In health professions, fidelity refers to maintaining good faith relationships between the various service providers and recipients. While respecting fidelity requires occupational therapy personnel to meet the client's reasonable expectations. Principle 7 specifically addresses fidelity as it relates to maintaining collegial and organizational relationships. Professional relationships are greatly influenced by the complexity of the environment in which occupational therapy personnel work. Practitioners, educators, and researchers alike must consistently balance their duties to service recipients, students, research participants, and other professionals, as well as the organizations that may influence decision-making and professional practice. All of these definitions came from the AOTA Code of Ethics. Resolving ethical dilemmas. Whether it is professional, or personal situation, you will someday come across a situation in which you have to resolve an ethical dilemma. The first thing you want to do is gather all the facts. Without the correct facts, you won't be able to make the right decision for the situation. Determine which ethical principles are involved from the principles I just went over. Clarify your professional duties in the situation. Is this something you will have to deal with on your own, or do you have to bring others in to help make the right decision? Describe the general nature of the outcomes desired or the consequences. If an ethical situation happens to come up with what you would like to happen, that doesn't make sense. Let me try that again. Describe the general nature of the outcome desired or the consequences you would like to see happen. And then lastly, describe practical features that are pertinent to this situation. So in summary, you've learned about credentialing and ethics from this PowerPoint. I do highly recommend you print out the Code of Ethics and keep those with you because they are extremely important as a professional and just so you know what you can and cannot do. Have a great day. Bye.